Well, here's what she had to say.
A million people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent. Thanks to the leadership of our President, Joe Biden, there is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and a hostage deal. And it is important that we recall what the deal involves. The first phase of the deal would bring about a full ceasefire, including a withdrawal of the Israeli military from population centers in Gaza. In the second phase, the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza entirely, and it would lead to a permanent end to the hostilities. It is time for this war to end, and end in a way where Israel is secure, all the hostages are released, the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza ends.
Why hasn't she notice how she hasn't mentioned the Palestinian hostages that Israel's holding? I'm just saying, because she's talking about releasing hostages, but I'm pretty sure she's only talking about if there are any left alive that were Israeli that Netanyahu basically threw out for dead because he didn't care about them.
No.
But I don't know. She doesn't seem to be acknowledged. She's literally, she's just reading whatever the State Department told her to read.
Yeah, and this is also part of the problem. See, if this was really something that she believed in, I would think that this would be her own words instead of worrying
not
about
even close.
And that's the problem, because it comes off as disingenuous. And by the way, well, how many are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 American flags.
No, and here's at least there's not an Israeli flag behind her. But
well, you never know; it might be hiding somewhere. You just can't.
Well, maybe that's why they had to bring in the extra flags for this to cover them up.
Let's not make it look bad.
No, but here's something that I think that people need to understand is that if anybody thinks that Benjamin Netanyahu isn't a complete bigot, you're delusional. If anybody thinks that he would have any more respect for her than he did for Barack Obama, also delusional. In fact, I could tell you that I'm not going to say the word that he probably uses about her, but it was what my grandmother would say. And I guarantee you it's not nice. So it'll be very interesting to me for her to try to have any sort of discussion with him when he's sitting there and looking at her like how he probably does. So, well, I mean, because he has no respect for her.
He probably doesn't have much respect for women, period.
No, and certainly not people of color. I mean, he is extremely racist. So I think it's interesting that she thinks she can have some sort of meaningful discourse with him when he's sitting there thinking that she should probably be like somewhere on a plantation.
Well, again, it's neither here nor there. For her, this is a career. It's all about the career. It's all about the opportunity to become the leader of the free world. Mm-hmm. And then listen, you saw what it did to our governor and the things that DeSantis started doing. There is almost no line that people with immense narcissistic political ambition are willing to do in order to get what they want. And if that means the brief honeymoon period that she had and is still having it, because, with all due respect, and I mean this in the most respectful way as I can possibly say it, all of the wine moms in the country that are so excited about her and are on their 120,000 or whatever Zoom call that they're on right now, talking about how we're going to get her elected. Okay,
and I can't tell you how much I sit here and cringe at the thought that this would be the first female president. I felt like this when it was Hillary too, by the way. And just so people are very clear, Kamala Harris is Team Clinton. She is Team Clinton. She might as well be Hillary in a Kamala suit. So I don't think people really understand how deep that goes.
Well, the thing that they're also not talking about the fact that so much of this money that has come in is corporate special interest money. You can say all you want about how this is grassroots money, and I'm sure she's going to raise a ton of it. But You're talking about the presidency of the United States. This party is wholeheartedly funded by Wall Street and Silicon Valley. And she is more, and has always been, willing to take that money. And as long as you're willing to do that and deliver the message that the status quo remains, maybe a couple of changes on the edge, and okay, a little bit of rosy language here and there, but that's not stopping it. And she's going to prove that in this statement, as we will see.
And the Palestinian people can exercise their right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. There has been hopeful movement in the talks to secure an agreement on this deal. And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done. So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home, and let's provide much-needed relief to the Palestinian people. And ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state solution.
There it is. That's it. End of story. Bye-bye.
I remain.
Bye-bye.
When you make that statement, what you're effectively saying is we are following the exact words that the Israel lobby is permitting us to use.
Ironically, the Israel lobby full knowing that they never have any intention of allowing there to be a second state.
Well, sure. And this also,
well, I think that's an important point.
Well, this is also the thing about being a congressional candidate that's important, especially one that may have an actual shot at winning. It's like the problem in the Democratic Party is that they do not want any dissent whatsoever. They don't want to hear it. They don't want even to know that it exists. As far as they're concerned, they would toss Rashida Tlaib out of the party right now if they could get away with it, but they know it wouldn't look good. So they're going to bide their time, but they're going to come for her again. There's no question.
I find it completely ridiculous and infuriating that the Democratic people or any of these Politico people are still yapping about a two-state solution when the cabinet of Israel, Netanyahu, all the people have said repeatedly that they will not have a Palestinian state. So how does she think we're having a two-state solution when Israel's saying we're not having a two-state solution? So that's how we know that that is just ridiculous. I just honestly, I honestly look forward to her losing gloriously. I do.
Wow. Still way too early to tell.
Solution. And I know right now it is hard to conceive of that prospect, but a two-state solution is the only path that ensures Israel remains a secure Jewish and democratic state, and one that ensures Palestinians can finally realize the freedom, security, and prosperity that they rightly deserve. And I will close with this then. It is important for the American people to remember the war in Gaza is not a binary issue. However, too often the conversation is binary, when the reality is anything but.
Seriously.
So I ask my fellow Americans to help encourage efforts to acknowledge the complexity, the nuance, and the history of the region. Let us all condemn terrorism and violence. Let us all do what we can to prevent the suffering of innocent civilians, and let us condemn anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate of any kind. And let us work to unite our country. I thank you.
Madam Vice President, after your meeting, are you convinced?
See, here's where it'll be interesting because, and this is what amazes me about the fact that she was a litigator. She cannot read off, she can't go off script. For someone who should be good talking, from the hip, being really good at doing that, she clearly isn't. So I don't know how that'll work, but she's just reading scripts. And if anybody mentions a two-state solution, I then will not take them seriously. You are no longer a serious person, and you are not someone that I can discuss this with. That's how stupid that sounds to me.
Well, the hype campaign and the propaganda and everything is going to be dialed up to a 25 because they're going to all be losing their minds. Listen, bottom line, I don't want Trump to be our commander in chief again. but I also
No.
recognize that this country is staring down the barrel of another Trump term because the
But I got to tell you, I don't want her either.
But the Democratic Party is anything but a Democratic, but it's anything but Democratic. It's not. She hasn't earned anything. She was literally put there. And there are people who will say that there stands for her, but the fact of the matter is, you know, so much of her political clout has been manufactured. It's so hard to even look at this as anything that's legitimate because we've been fed these lies for so long. And again, I have no problem with people, you know, feeling that they have hope with her and that they think that things could potentially get better.
I do.
You know,
I do.
yeah,
I agree with Steve. I'm with Steve on this.